Well, good afternoon, West Ham fans. For us on the West Ham Network, hope you're safe and well. It's Monday. These days, honestly, these weekends go so effing quickly. Probably without West Ham because it hasn't ruined my weekend. But hope you had a lovely weekend. This morning, we spoke about what is the point of Evan Ferguson, and I've suggested that maybe his and if you haven't seen it, cracking goal he scored yesterday for Republic of Ireland as they beat Bulgaria to maintain their B status. I don't really know how it works for yours, but honestly, a cracking goal from Evan. Could that be the spark? Could that be, as Stereophonics says, it only takes one match to burn 1,000 trees? Could that be our little sort of kick starts to the Evan Ferguson loan spell? Just suggesting it, particularly under the news that Brighton are very unhappy with how it's gone in terms of the loan deal, which is fair enough. But anyway, plenty to talk about. A couple of things off the field and one thing potentially on the field, but we'll probably never get him on the field. It'll make sense. Let's crack on like, let's get on it like Sonic. That'll do. On it like Sonic. And let's talk about Danny Kretinsky. Obviously, our second highest shareholder at West Ham. And a report over the weekend may suggest that there could be rumblings of discontent in the boardroom. According to Graham Bailey, he has said that he's been told that Danny Kretinsky is becoming somewhat frustrated with how West Ham is being run. Not the only one. The 49-year-old is apparently unwilling to wait much longer to increase his stake, and he's not confident with with David Sullivan, and will walk away anytime soon, according to the report. He also co-owns Sparta Prague, and he's understood to be looking at the feasibility of cashing in his 27% stake at West Ham and potentially reinvesting in another club. Obviously, we know he owns 27%, and he has an option to purchase David Sullivan's shares should the chairman decide to quit, in the same way that he had an option to purchase David Gold's shares as well. The three of them had a mutually agreed number, so they knew how much it would cost to buy each other out, basically. Now, for me, I think he's in a bit between a rock and a hard place. I do not for 1 minute assume he wants to increase his stake, because there has been opportunities to do that with the David Gold shares. That's that they were willing to sell half of the shareholding, and potentially could have even sold even more if the offer was there. And the truth of the matter is that they haven't been bought by either Daniel Kretinsky or by David Sullivan. So for me, I don't assume that Sullivan would buy the extra shares, because he could have already bought extra shares already, which would give him even more of a control, which would have given him a controlling stake at West Ham, regardless of what happens with Daniel Kretinsky. He's got in essence, who's going to spend 200 million, which is roughly probably the price of the shares, on a non-controlling stake of a football club? Can't see it happening. Cannot see it happening. We've seen already. We don't know what's happened with Rothschild and Co. Obviously, they were looking after the gold shares, and nothing's come out of that in terms of being able to sell them as a minority stake. So the chances are, if we couldn't do it at a lower rate, are we going to sell more at 200 million? Is someone going to come in and buy them? I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. So I think he's in between a rock and a hard place. He either tries to buy up other shares, become a controlling stakeholder, and then sell, or I don't know. But clearly there is some issues there with how it's been run. Obviously, we had the whole Tim Stein debacle. Is it right to call it debacle? Probably not. Era, probably best word for that. And obviously we were led to be believed that the director of football position, the technical director, the Tim Steidten role was influenced. The decision to make was influenced by Daniel Kretinsky bringing in. He wanted to bring in someone to oversee footballing operations. Now, at the moment, there's no one there to do that. Now, there is definitely a gap. There is a Dan Ashworth shaped hole, I think, to do that. Having someone who is just in charge of footballing operations like Tim was. But I think it's interesting. The report said that it was the most expensive season ticket in football, and it very much is. You are a minority shareholder. The person who has the most shares has the most say. And I think there is, and I think it was Clarence Hugh mentioned that there's sort of sketchy reports about it, to be honest, and it could be that his main gripe is a lack of influence, and in essence, there's an effective this feeling of powerfulness rather, in terms of making decisions, because he can always get overruled by David Sullivan, and that is how shareholdings work. The biggest shareholder has the biggest. There has been opportunity for him to become the biggest biggest shareholder, but that hasn't been. Nothing's happened with that either. So there is a disconnect somewhere, and I can't see. I can't see anything unless there's going to be unless he's going to lose a lot of money by selling a very big chunk at a very cheap rates. I can't see him going. And losing money. And I can't see him reinvesting. We've had people. We know that Tripp is looking to the US and the Canadian market, particularly the World Cup next year, for investments potentially. We know that Baroness Brady has been to the Middle East to try and find and drum up some interest. But there seems to be a reluctance, particularly at a minority stake. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens. Elsewhere, let's talk about there's no one better than Lucas Paqueta, our Brazilian Magnifico. Now, obviously, currently the trial is underway. There's been some reports are quite sketchy because it is a behind closed doors hearing. Sky Sports Carve, he on I think it's Friday night or Thursday night said that the Sky reported that there was unusually large bets placed on the Brazilian, and he was going through some of the bets that were placed. Half of the suspicious bets at the heart of the case were under £50, with most under £100. One was for £7. While one of the bets placed by a relative was flagged as unusually large because it was £30. That could be a factor of they're putting small bet. It could be a factor of multiple small bets to make it undetectable, potentially. Who knows? We also reported over the weekend about Paqueta's character, so to speak, and his reactions when the accusations were first reported in the Daily Mail on Sunday. The 27-year-old reacted apparently very nonchalantly when told about the potential allegations outlined in the details of the investigation, but was rather detached around Rush Green and also appeared unfazed by the eye-opening developments. The report said, quoted as saying, "A few details have reached me about how Paqueta managed its existence in the early days of the important saga. Once the asteroid came into view, they took us back to August 2023. That's when word first arrived from the FA. They were looking into him, and the Brazilian was taken into a room at West Ham's base at Rush Green, where a few of the particulars were laid out to him by a senior member of club staff." I would imagine probably the club secretary, to be honest. It's not clear if this was the first time Paqueta had heard of it, but that's the assumption of the source who shared the recollection. In any case, there were apparently no panic from the player or much any emotion at all. Instead, word went around the training ground that he was entirely relaxed by the whole thing and even maybe a little detached from the situation. And then the report goes on further to say in the time since a move away from West Ham fell away, obviously, to Man City. The player apparently sulked away from David Moyes' training sessions before then refusing to go on a school trip as part of the community work. I just find it strange that, I know we're sort of digging up old ground, but in terms of the hearing, but how some of these leak stories, particularly the community centre and the relaxedness of him and sulking, why are they... Why is this the first time we've heard of them now? Sort of 18 months since they first happened. I think there's not necessarily a witch hunt, but there does seem to be a lot of anti Paqueta character stuff happening, coming out for the press, and whether that has been, leaked out by the FA, I don't know, but it does seem to be a relatively slant and slandering on his character. I think I've had job offers and they've been pulled away the last minute, and it's annoying. And I've probably sulked as well. It's their career, so I don't think it's... And the whole thing about the community visit, it's like, why mention that? I don't get it unless it's to slurry his character, which is something which the club are trying to do the other way and trying to sort of say, look, well, he's always a bit of a reckless player, and that's why he's got bookings and da. So there's sort of this sort of counterbalancing. We've still got another 2 weeks of this as well, at least. So, yes. And in terms of sagas, in terms of transfer sagas, Jonathan David. Going to Claret and Hugh, West Ham are going to put a renewed attempt in to sign the little striker. By all accounts, our bid for Angel Gomez isn't going to happen, considering we've offered him less than we offered Guillermo Rodriguez, apparently. But according to Claret and Hugh, they had conversations with a London Stadium insider who has confirmed that the club are now placing signing David top of their... I'll say top of the pops, but top of the list in terms of priorities. But there's little confidence they're going to get the deal done. Unrequited love, basically. Barcelona and Arsenal are both considered to be front runners. There were reports the other day that potentially Barcelona pulled out because they don't necessarily need, and we spoke about that last week. They don't necessarily need him at the moment. They've got the financial to back him as well in terms of getting him in. And apparently Graham Potter has since asked for renewed urgency in the club's pursuit of the striker. And as a result, West Ham have submitted a second proposal, but we understand that our financial package is not among the most competitive on the table. Once bidden and twice shy. As I said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And that is it, my friends. Thank you very, very much for your time. As per usual, don't forget to like, comment, share, all that good stuff. We'll have Hammer's headlines later on, where we'll be talking about... it's more the Academy show meets Hammer's headlines. There's lots of players out on international duty and stuff like that, but I thought we'll shine a light on the Academy players out on international duty as well, because and also some of them have played some league football as well, because non-league was playing as well. Regan Clayton and Levi and various others played as well. A little bit of contract news as well. So until then, my friends, take care and stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith. And also, hopefully Thursday, Ludwig McCloskey Appreciation Night. Martin's told me he's doing it on Thursday, so there we go. Much love. Bye-bye.